On today's show, we're going to bounce around the WNBA draft landscape. In segment one, we'll talk about Endyia Rogers and Charisma Osborne's decisions to return to school. In segment two, we'll cover notable tidbits from yesterday's pre-draft media session and hear ESPN analyst LaChina Robinson's thoughts on some immediate impact WNBA rookies from the 2023 WNBA draft class. Women's basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Welcome. You're Women's Basketball. My name is Hunter Cruse, and I'm the Saturday host covering the WNBA draft and college basketball at large. Thanks for making Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. So to open up this episode, we're going to talk about just some of the impact that these returning decisions have had on this year's draft. So specifically, Endyia Rogers at Oregon. She will return to school. She was a top 10 prospect on the Nexus draft board pre her announcing she returned to school. We also have Charisma Osborne at UCLA. She announced she would withdraw from the draft to return to UCLA. She was a top 15 prospect, and at one point, she was receiving lottery buzz. She had a rough second half of the season, and it was really tough overall for her. Her efficiency dropped in Pac-12 play, and she struggled to find her jumper late as well. So another prospect returned to school. We also have Elizabeth Kitley, the star post player for Virginia Tech. She will return for her fifth year. She was like a borderline late first, second round prospect for us. She was at number 17 on our board. So we our host Jackie Powell last week, she covered the idea of a super draft. And this is even more now. Endyia Rogers, Charisma Osborne, they were potential first-round picks this season. If they return, and if they are returned to school next season, they will probably be late second-round picks, maybe mid-second-round picks next year, given how stacked these next couple drafts are. Obviously, that can differ a little bit depending on if 2024 draft picks use their COVID year, pushing 2025 to be just dominant overall. But I know we've heard some things about Endyia Rogers to LSU. We've heard potential rumors about her transferring out of Oregon. That's sort of in the air right now. But for those unfamiliar, Endyia Rogers is like a 5'6" guard. She excels on ball, good pick and roll ball handler, really good floater, gets downhill easily. She isn't the quickest guard in the world. She has short steps. She's not the greatest passer either, but she's taken major strides as a shooter this past season. She was like a low 30s shooter, and she's emerged as a real three-point threat for Oregon this past season. She did have a super large role at Oregon, so her efficiency also dropped late, just given how much she was taxed, like almost more than any guard in the country at Oregon. They didn't have a really well-spaced and orchestrated offense either, so she will return to school. Then we also have, like I said earlier, Charisma Osborne at UCLA. She is like a combo guard, good point of attack defender. She's a really solid defender overall. She isn't the greatest athlete either, but she has some quick bursts. She can get downhill. She has a weird jumper, sort of. It's sort of a weird load up jumper. She doesn't get a lot of regular force. It's sort of slow, methodical. So she'll need to really regain where she was at early in the season because she started out the year hot. She was looking like a lottery pick at one point, and she slowed down, and it makes sense to return to school for her. She will be able to capitalize on NIL opportunities. She will be able to maybe regain some of her stock and prove to WNBA teams that she's still a great prospect, especially post-injury, because she dealt with some injuries mid-season, and I believe it was a shoulder injury too. So that can kind of hinder with shooting development, can hinder with how she gets her jumper off, especially for a small guard like her that needs that up tempo force to get the ball in the hoop. And then Elizabeth Kitley, we had a lot of questions about her. I know early in the season you would see her in the mid-first round on some boards, but I think as the season went on, you could kind of see some of the more concerns come out more. to where she doesn't have any sort of outside jumper. Her defense is kind of limited as well. She can't really defend in space. And also, even as a post defender, she's okay, but she doesn't get a lot of verticality. So that's another limitation. And then on her post ups and her face ups, she struggles to deal with double teams as well. Whenever a double comes her way, someone stunts, they dig down to her in the post. She struggles to kind of manage that because she's like a finesse based player. She isn't the strongest in the world. She's not the most athletic in the world. She'll use her smart. She'll use her good footwork, her savviness, her touch to get really good shots at the rim. So her skill set's sort of limited in the modern basketball landscape. So return to school makes sense for her. Virginia Tech, they're returning a good bit of their roster, and they're going to be really solid again next season. They won't have Taylor Soule, but this team shaking up to be one of the favorites entering this next season. So after the break, we'll dive into some notable tidbits from yesterday's pre-draft media sessions, where what we heard from Lynn Dunn, Greg Bibb, among others. The tournament, there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel. America's #1 sports book. That's because right now FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wait on everything from the money line to the point spreads to which team will cut down the net. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss out on your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. When you join FanDuel today, just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon today /lockedon to sign up. Every moment more with FanDuel. And we're back. I'm your host, Hunter Cruse, and I appreciate you for making Locked On Basketball your first listen today. Also, I'll be hosting a WNBA Draft live show alongside R.M. Adler with pick-to-pick analysis you can't find anywhere else. The link to our Watch Playback room will be left in the description of this episode. It's completely free. Just sign up and create an account, add your TV provider, and you'll be good to go. Again, that will be held on www.playback.tv in the next room. And then also, we're gearing up for the draft here as well. And yesterday, there was a pre-draft media session with ESPN analyst Rebecca Lobo, LaChina Robinson. We also heard from Greg Bibb, Lynn Dunn, Tanisha Wright, just a lot of insightful information on the draft. So I'm going to run through some notable quotes, some notable things that we gained from that session. So starting off, Tanisha Wright talked about some of the prospects who's raised their stock more in the NCAA tournament. And she mentioned Alexis Morris at LSU, a really solid Final Four for her. Also, Zia Cook. Zia Cook was South Carolina's major offensive force in that game against Iowa. She's super slippery, gets downhill, good mid-range pull-up, a lot of valuable skills that I can see a team looking forward to drafting in this class. Greg Bibb also added, I think Jordan Horston had a really nice tournament run and demonstrated that she'll be a nice fit for whatever team drafts her, end quote. And like you said, Jordan Horston was very solid in the tournament. I think she was solid as well in the SEC tournament. It was mentioned in our draft guide, Jordan Horston's play really exploded after the injury of Tamari Key. Being able to space the floor more than anything and having more room for a player like Jordan Horston, who is, as good as she is, she's limited on offense from a three-point spacing standpoint. Also, Rakia Jackson doesn't really draw as many closeouts either. So if you're having three non-shooters on the court at one time, that limits what Jordan Horston could do with the ball in her hands. And we saw that more as the season went on. Tennessee was spacing the floor better. They were having more room, more space for Jordan Horston to operate and be this big creator that could generate paint touches, could facilitate for others. And that's what you're looking at in the draft, where if Jordan Horston is drafted in the lottery, I could see her having a lot of value to a team's second unit as a rookie. I don't expect her to start, just given the landscape of the draft, but in a second unit, give her some like ideal spacing, give her opportunities to be this creator, explore her game, and continue to grow. Because her turnover rate was a problem early as an underclassman. She has cleaned up on some of those issues as well. She's also just improving as an athlete even more. She's already one of the best athletes in the draft. She has long arms. She has like a 40-inch vertical or something in that range. She is a high leaper. So there's value in her, positionally, defensively as well. She can defend multiple positions. She's athletic on defense, smart, communicates well. So she could be in play for Dallas as well. Dallas has 2 picks in the top 5 at number 3 and 5. Jordan Horson would be a decent fit. They need wings. Funny enough, the Dallas Wings need wings. Also, Greg Bibb also said this about Jordan Horson. Size will allow her to be versatile. Athleticism is unquestioned. Need better consistency shooting, but I think she's going to be in our league for a long time. End quote. Sharif with the Minnesota Lynx. She also said a player you could see in the league for a long time. And yeah, I mean, we also heard from Sharif as well on players who improved this year. I don't think that your opinions change, but you could go much deeper into your scouts. I would say Maddie Segrist, Lulupa Seneschal, and maybe Stephanie Suarez. Tanisha Wright also threw in Dorka Juhas from UConn as a player that's improved her stock as well. And on that first front, Lulupa Seneschal has exploded this season. She came into this season at UConn expecting to be like a bench depth piece. Injuries happened to like Paige Beckers, et cetera, et cetera. She has exploded, and she is one of the older prospects in this class. She will be 25 very soon. So she's, funny enough, she's older than Ezi Magbagor, who has been in the league for like 4 or 5 seasons. So Lulupa Seneschal is like a plug-and-play rookie if there's ever been one. Elite shooter. She has a good mid-range pull-up jumper. She is an effective finisher. She doesn't get to the rim a lot just because she is limited athletically in some sense. So she's more of this 3-point spacer. She can run the gaps well. She can cut. So she is, I could say, being a plug-and-play fit for a team. Wanting to go into training camp, having a player that they can rely on, especially someone like Lulupa Seneschal, where she has the experience. She has high-level playing experience as well. So she's another prospect that I could see going higher than most would expect, given her plug-and-play ability. And I think teams are more willing to just take players that they feel can compete than upside swings, because different teams have different philosophies. Some teams will be more willing to take upside bets and swing for the fences. I think Seattle could be one team like that. We've seen this offseason. Their roster doesn't really make sense in some ways, but they have a lot of players that have upside. It's like a low risk, high reward play. If it works out well, they're long term fits. If they're not, they can just be off the roster next season. They try again, and as they try to retool the roster around Jewel Lloyd, Ezi Mabkor, that's a strategy as well. There's 2 different ways I think teams go about it. And there's teams that will mix strategies as well. Some teams will want to go more, okay, at this position, I want to have more upside. I want to, because we might already have a talented player, like a talented post player. Let's go with someone that has more upside at the back end. And if things work right, we have an easy player to fit in right there. And then moving forward, we also heard pretty interesting quote from Rebecca Lobo about who she thinks is the next best post player in the draft after Boston. She said Stephanie Suarez. I would kind of push back on this a little bit. I think the easy pick for me is Mia Hirsch, French big. But for Stephanie Suarez, if you're familiar with talking about a post player with some intriguing size, some athleticism as well, she can space the floor a little bit, pick and pop threat. She is more of like a theoretical shooter, though, because she's never been this knockdown shooter. I don't think she's ever shot better than like 34% in her collegiate career. So you're more gambling on her good touch. She has a very fluid jumper. So just mechanic-wise, that's what you're banking on with Stephanie Suarez. So I think she's old. She's an older prospect, 2 ACL injuries. I have my concerns with the value you can get in a first round pick with her, especially if she's going up near the lottery. I think it's sort of rich for me taking a player with the injury concerns, lack of Division One experience, and then also just a very theoretical game that could be risky for a team. And I know teams are more willing to take, okay, it's like a deferral pick. We're not going to roster rookie this season. Let's just take Stephanie Suarez. If she looks good next season, she's on our roster. If she doesn't, we'll wait and see kind of thing. Another thing we also heard was from LaChina Robinson. I'll throw a clip in here. She spoke about some of her favorite and most reliable plug-and-play rookies from this draft. And I think it was an insightful listen for you guys, so I'll play it right here.
Yeah, I'll start in terms of immediate impact. Rebecca named 2 players in Aaliyah Boston and Diamond Miller that you expect to come into the WNBA right away and make an impact. But there's several others that could, depending on fit. And that's really what this draft is about, is getting to the right team and having an opportunity and what those team needs may be. You look at a player like Maddie Segrist, who can just flat out shoot the ball, Jordan Forston, whose defensive ability are WNBA ready. Rebecca mentioned Ashley Jones earlier. Grace Berger is a player that can come in as a combo guard right away and have an impact. Zaya Cook, absolutely. You could see with her explosiveness, and in particular, if she can play that combo guard position, and her scoring ability would be someone that you could see having immediate impact. I mean, there are a number of players across the board. It just really is about fit and opportunity to come in and, make a difference.
And then after the break, I want to quickly talk about the Nike Hoop Summit event coming up on Saturday. It'll feature Juju Watkins, Shanice Swain, a lot of interesting prospects in the inaugural Hoop Summit women's game. It'll be very interesting to watch and get a better look at prospects that you usually don't see in the States, players that are overseas, players that we usually won't get opportunities to see them until college. So I'll talk about it after the break. Okay, and we're back. So on Saturday, there will be the Nike Hoop Summit event. It features high school seniors, specifically Juju Watkins, specifically for the U.S. team. They will face off against the world team, which features players that range from like 17 to 19 years old. On one end, you have some players from Canada, players that will be in college in a few years, maybe next season. You also have some international players from Australia. You have players from Latvia. You have players from Sweden, et cetera, et cetera. So that game will be held. That'll be held on Saturday, starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time. It'll be available on the ESPN app. It'll also be available on NBA TV to watch. And what's interesting about this game is it's an opportunity for WNBA scouts and evaluators to see Shanice Swain. She's a 5'9.5" Australian guard. She played alongside Seattle Storm rookie guard Jaden Melbourne this past season. She is a top 15 prospect on our board. And she's kind of rising to the first round with the withdrawals from, like we mentioned earlier, from Charisma Osborne, from Endyia Rogers. She has a 6'2" wingspan, so long arms. She is a really good shooter at the combo guard position. She isn't the greatest passer, but she flashes a lot of interesting decision-making reads, being able to make skip passes, being able to use like that typical Aussie flair with their passing reads, being able to no-look pass, one-hand sling passes, cutter, drop-off passes. She is a super fascinating prospect that could hear her name called anywhere from like the early second round to the early third round. So this is a big opportunity for her. Showcase herself. I believe if she has like a big showing here in this game, she could really, really cement herself as a real prospect in this class and be in play for like a late first round pick. If things just go great, if things are awesome and she looks great, just being able to show lights out shooting ability. PD Webb works for Cerebro Sports, a data site. He actually mentioned that she was the most polished prospect at the event for the world team. So I think she's staking up to have a really big performance. And if you want to see that also be, like I said earlier, it'll be 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time on NBA TV, and it'll be interesting to see how that event goes, and for sure. Thanks for making Locked On Basketball your first listen today. Now make your second listen game to game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game across the NBA. Local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available in the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Tomorrow we'll be back to discuss our 2023 WNBA Draft board that released on Thursday. It had in-depth analysis on over 15 prospects in this draft class. So we'll be back to discuss that, the disagreements on our board, prospects that we believe could rise in this class, and prospects that we are lower on compared to the consensus, because on our board, there's some like omniscience, like, okay, Bree Beal, Zaya Cook. These are a few of the prospects, even Alexis Morris, that aren't on our board, but you'll hear and you'll see their names in the late first round. You'll see even Bree Beal's case. You'll see her in the mid first round. So just interesting draft analysis, and we'll kind of go into those details as well. Some of our concerns with Bree Beal, some of our concerns with these prospects that don't have a super scalable skill set. And yeah,